everyone. So it's been a little while. I think it's been, how long is it now? A few months since the last time my last video. So I thought I'd start by saying a little apology for that. Sorry that it's been a while. There's been sort of some family issues going on which have started to settle, which is nice. So I just haven't had a lot of time to go through and actually make some decent content for all of you. So that's going to resume, so don't worry, a little bit more to come. I've sort of had some ideas in mind. I am planning to obviously do an overview still of France. Sorry that hasn't come out yet. I just want to do it in a nice detailed manner where I go over and actually give you all some advice, partly for you booking trips and planning trips and also for when you're over there. I've also been to a few other countries as well and I'd like to add some advice of those in as well. So for today's video though, something quite important in my view is talking about sort of the long-term plans I have for this channel. So the long-term plans being, where do I sort of want to bring these videos, why have I even started doing this, and what I'm actually planning to do. So if you have watched my previous trip, I've done a cycle trip from here in the UK to Barcelona in Spain, and over that 1,000 mile trip I use this in some ways as a bit of a sort of test for a lot of my equipment, for myself, and to give myself an idea for what this plan's going to be. And I have alluded to this idea a few times now. My plan is essentially to go from here in the UK and around the world and back to here, hopefully in the UK from where I basically started. So I'm essentially planning to do a round the world cycle trip. It's been something I've been planning now for the last couple of years, or at least deliberating the idea of, and it's something now I'm taking quite seriously in the terms of having the money there for it and actually getting all the equipment for it, and basically preparing myself mentally for it as well. What I want to start off by doing is just talking about sort of where I'm going to be going, and then I'm going to bookmark for all of you, so if there's anything you don't need to watch or you don't want to watch, just skip through it and go to the bits you think are relevant for you. But then I'm going to talk through just things such as planning and sort of where I want to go with the channel in terms of making these videos, like what is my intended outcome and so forth. The route I'm looking at doing isn't going to be a specific route in the sense that every single day I'm going to have meticulously planned. Everywhere I've read, mostly the advice has always been to have an open plan. And I have pretty much followed this with the majority of my trips I have done. For example, last year I was deliberating whether to go to Barcelona or Lisbon, and after a few days worth of cycling realised the mileage with the terrain and also the heat wave that was soon to be, Lisbon wasn't for me. Doing the extra 300-400 miles was not, and the terrain in that part of Spain as well was not what I wanted to do. So I was quite open to change it. Although I was starting to already head west, I thought, no, let's just head south, let's go through Paris and let's go to Barcelona. That works better. And I think that open and flexible route works to your advantage in a lot of ways, and that's more just advice for all of you. If you plan your trip day to day, yeah, great, a week maybe, but even then anything can happen. You might hear from someone else that this place is really cool. You might have the worst headwind ever known to man. So it's just the openness on a bike makes sense. Yeah, when you're getting on trains and buses you can plan it a bit more day to day, but on a bike there's nothing worse than having to get somewhere and you are fighting the elements and yourself or whatever it might be. So the way I'm going to plan this route is to basically have goalposts, places of interest that I want to go through along the way. So for example, the first example of this will be is I want to go from the UK to Istanbul as my first goal. So it's about 2.5 to 3 months roughly, maybe a little bit shorter, to get from here to Istanbul. And along that way I could take multiple different routes, but the route I am considering is the Danube River. So I'm planning to go non-Danube way, obviously, from here to Germany, and then I'm looking to pick up the Danube somewhere in Germany and follow that all the way from Germany into Eastern Europe and so forth. And I feel this is a really cool route because you're going to see loads of cities, but I'm not going to do that knowing where I'm going to be every day. I might even come off of the route. I know certain countries, the river route can be pretty dreadful. There's no path, it's dirt, and so you go off and go on the road. This is sort of the way I'm going to plan the trip through. So the first bit will be Istanbul. I am then going to go into Central Asia. So originally I was looking at Iran as a country of interest, still a place I'd love to see. unfortunately, there's a lot of issues going on and around at the moment. It's quite dangerous for Westerners to enter this country, as they are arresting people basically randomly for no reason. So I am probably going to look at the Caspian Sea. So then that means instead of going Turkey to Iran, I'll be going Turkey up to Georgia and so forth towards the Caspian Sea, and getting that very reliable weekly ferry, which can apparently be a nightmare to book. And then after that, I'm looking to go into the stans. So I'll be getting the ferry to Kazakhstan, and then I will be following all of the little stans that are south of Kazakhstan, for example, like Uzbekistan and so forth, and then going back into Kazakhstan, and then wanting to enter China. And then through China, I'd like to go from, you go through the Gobi Desert, and then entering most likely Xi'an in China, in eastern China, and then heading south. And then from that point on, I would like to enter Southeast Asia, either crossing the border from China to Vietnam or Laos. And then, so if I entered Laos, then I would go from there to Vietnam, then Vietnam to Cambodia, Cambodia to Thailand. Or if it was just Vietnam, I'd just follow Vietnam down. And then onwards from there, my route is essentially to go from Bangkok in Thailand or wherever, down south into Southeast Asia further. So this would be into Malaysia, Singapore, and then probably Indonesia, and then follow the route through Indonesia. So I would be looking to fly from probably one of three places, which would either be Singapore, Jakarta in Indonesia, or Bali in Indonesia. And this would be to go to the west coast of Australia. And then I'm planning, hopefully, this might change, I'm hopefully thinking of going for Australia, then New Zealand, then back to the Americas, probably just the United States, and going from the west coast to the east coast. So either somewhere like, I don't know, Los Angeles, San Francisco, to, Florida, Miami, or Miami, Florida, sorry, or New York or somewhere. So this is what I mean with this sort of open-minded route, is I'm not going to have this set in stone. What I am planning to do, though, which I haven't spoke about yet, is I really want to do this for a charity. So for this charity, I'm thinking about pledging a certain amount of miles or kilometers for this trip, and more having an open, flexible route with the intention to finish where I started. Talking about charities, to go in a bit more detail. So I'm thinking, as a teacher, I've been working in school for the last 4 years, 2 years as a qualified teacher now. And something that really I feel is quite important to me is to consider doing something for a children's charity. So working with a lot of children, you notice how many of them can be quite disadvantaged in this world. We do not choose where we're born, and a lot of children pay the consequence of this. They suffer through either the environment they're born in. They might be in a lovely family, but one of the poorest countries, or a war-torn country, or they might be in a household that isn't very supportive. So for me, it'd be really lovely to be able to raise some money for a children's charity while doing this cycle. So I am at the moment still looking into what charity that might be. I have a few ideas. I'm not going to name any names as of yet, but this is to go along with the trip. And I'm probably going to look at pledging a certain amount of miles for that, so that it gives me that flexibility in terms of my route. I'm not saying I'm going to go here, 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 and here. I'm more looking to do the distances. And this distance would probably be flexible enough, whereas if I didn't even want to go down towards Australia, and instead I wanted to cycle, say, to Japan from here in the UK and then go to the United States that way, it would still be the right distance. And then if I went over that, then great, it's more money for that. But I don't want to obviously overcommit and regret it and not enjoy the experience either. So in terms of route, the reason why I've been so hesitant of talking about this for a while is because you can see with the route itself and the charities, I'm still not fully set on what that is and what that picture is. I am a lot more than I was last summer, but that's still in development, and I will talk about that more as the videos go on. Next bit I want to talk about is just sort of what I'm intending to do in terms of videos for the next year. So majority of the videos from this point on are going to be me basically going over and discussing this whole planning process. If I can, I'll bring you along for the journey for visa applications, talk about what goes through with that, what goes through my mind with the planning, any sort of reservations I have, equipment buying and so forth. So the next year, I always find it interesting. I've watched, for example, The Long Way Down, The Long Way Round, I think it is, with Ewan McGregor, and the other guy's name's got in my head, Charlie something. I'll put the name down. It's probably not even Charlie. Me and my names, I'm terrible. But even the planning stage can be really interesting. As long as it's not overdone, I find that can be really interesting and also very useful. On top of that, in terms of trips, I do have a trip I'm thinking of in the summertime. Not too set on a route yet, but I would like to just go away for a few weeks. One of my best mates is getting married halfway through the summer holidays, so it's only going to be a few weeks, which is fine for me because it is really getting to the point now where I am really thinking about almost every pound I'm spending, because all of this money is going towards this trip. I'm not going to be doing trips for the sake of doing them now. There's places I would like to see before I go, but I can always see them after. But I'm not going to be doing like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trips and spending all the money now and having a really frugal, horrible experience on this round the world one. So I'm probably only going to have 1 to 2 trips in the next year. So a lot of the focus is going to be on the planning side of it, with probably like a couple of day trips here and there and so forth included with those longer ones. But I will keep you posted on that anyway. Something I think is worth mentioning is just what actually motivated me to want to do something like this. It's amazing how many people you talk to who just can't imagine anything worse than getting on a bike and cycling every day. And I get that. But basically, if you don't know, which a lot of you don't, is I went away when I was 23, 24. I used to be a mechanic and I quit my job. Just things weren't going to plan in the nicest way possible. And I just decided just to pack it all up and just go away for a year, near a year anyway. And I booked a flight to Tokyo. I backpacked from Tokyo into South Korea, China, down to Southeast Asia, traveling by train and bus mostly. And this was a really awesome experience, and I would recommend that to anyone who doesn't want to jump on a bike. It is a really cool experience. What I'm about to say doesn't undermine that experience on its own. It's just personal for me. It's just there were some things that I felt were missing from that. And this especially came true when I met someone. So when I was in China, I bumped into a cycle tourist. And I think this was down either in Xi'an or Chengdu. And I remember just chatting to this guy who was on his bike. He arrived on his bike and the conversation started a little bit, and then I bumped into again later in the evening and just talking about his trip. And basically the trip he'd done is similar to what I'm looking to do. And the appeal for me for doing a cycle touring trip is seeing those places in between. When you backpack, when you get on public transport, you miss so much, I feel, in some ways, and those little places in between. And to a lot of people, that isn't important. You know, a village is a village, a town's a town, yeah, whatever. And what becomes the importance is the tourist hubs, the destinations, the sightseeing. You seeing the main cities, going to Beijing, going to Shanghai, going to Chengdu to see the pandas, going to Xi'an to see the terracotta warriors. And in some ways this is fun, but this can get a bit tedious after a while because you're just sightseeing all the time. And something that really appealed to me about the cycling trip was that sense of adventure, that going from point A to point B and what is there in between, that make and break situation that comes with that. And I really got a sense of this with the guys talking to back in China. And I really wanted to be able to see these places that you don't see on a public transport, on a train. And my trip back in the summer really made this stand out to me. As someone who's been to Paris, as someone who's already been to Barcelona, that was the trip. Whereas on the bike, that was part of it. That was a cool experience. But, out of all the days on the bike, I spent 5 hours in the city centre of Paris on the bike, and I spent a day in Versailles. I also spent a day and a bit in Barcelona. These weren't the centres of the trip, and I really want more of that in more remote places and in countries I'm not going to go on holiday to. I mean, not a lot of people go on holiday to Kazakhstan or Eastern Turkey unless it's down to the beach in the south. So for me, this is a great time to do that. And along with my age, I am now 29, turning 30 in October. I know I'm not getting younger. I'm not saying I'm old, but I feel it sometimes. But it is knowing that actually at some point commitments can get harder to break. Even now, I find it hard in some ways packing everything up again to go away, but I know it's important to me. But I know maybe in 5 years' time, even shorter, there might be some more commitments that would make it even more difficult. The final thing I really want to talk about today is just my intended outcome. So you have a rough idea of me, my plans and why I'm doing it, but also I want to just talk about why I'm actually making these videos and want to film the experience as well. So with that trip I done previously, I did have a YouTube channel, but I really didn't like. Now I can't stand watching any, but I can't go back and watch those videos. I definitely had some form of depression back then, just with the circumstances of what's going on, or happened more like. And this really fed into those videos. There was a lot of negativity. I was really fed up. I was quite miserable a lot of the time, and the travel itself really helped me break away from that. But it came at the cost of the quality of what I was outputting at the time. On top of that, I really, at that time, spent so much time just making videos. There wasn't even really a purpose to them. I had this idea that I should be uploading them once a week and so forth. So I learned a lot from that. And this time round, I have a much clearer picture of what it is I actually want to produce. So the first thing that you might realize in previous videos, you might have picked up in the previous videos, is I write my own music. I do want to carry on doing this on the bike. I have a little mini MIDI keyboard thing which I can bring with me, so I'm not carrying loads of gear. I still want to make these songs and upload these songs along with my videos. I think it adds a lot of my own creativity into it. I like to use my own stuff, and it makes, as someone who can write music, I think I'm doing myself a disservice by not, because there's always problems of copyright issues, even if you use royalty-free music sometimes. And on top of that, with my actual plans of what I want to produce, is I really want to capture two things. And I find a lot of the time, more to do with the age of the videos because of the lack of technology, I usually find they struggle to capture one of two things. Either they tell the story really well, and you don't see much of where they are, or you see a lot of where they are, but you don't really get much of a story. And I feel the problem with a lack of either of these is if you don't get much of a story, you don't necessarily really know where they are. And if you don't see where they are, you don't really get much of the story. So what I really tried to capture in my previous video was a bit of both. And with this, I've invested in some filming equipment. So I got myself a new GoPro and also got myself a drone, which is something I've always really wanted for filming, because especially for scenery, I love scenery. I love picturesque scenery. And I think with a drone, it really brings that out and really captures that. I mean, me and my little GoPro stand on the side of the road doesn't fully capture where I am. And I find, although you're there seeing the same thing, I don't know what it is, but with a camera in that point of view, it doesn't capture it in the same way, because you're not getting the whole picture. I can't film 5 hours of my cycling, but with a drone I can capture probably half an hour to 40 minutes worth of scenery, just because you're that much higher, and you can see well in the distance where I'm going. And on top of that, it's just a very different perspective, and it changes up these videos. So basically, that is my intended outcomes. There's a little overview. There's probably little bits of information I have missed here and there, but hopefully this gives you just enough of an insight into what this channel is and what my intentions are of this channel. If this sounds like something that interests you, please do subscribe and like the video. It's lovely getting the feedback, as I've had in previous videos, of all of the previous watchers of those videos and subscribers, and it really builds a lovely community. On top of that, if there's any advice, anything you think that is important to you that you feel you need to say, then please do just put it in the comments, because even if it's something I already know or don't know, regardless of me, it really helps people in the comments, even because someone might read your comment and your advice and really take hold of that and really help them. So, and on top of that, maybe it will really help me, and it'll help with the direction of these videos as well. So all more than welcome for that, and I love that. So, but until then, I hope you have the most wonderful day and week, and I will be uploading some more videos in the near future, and I'm looking forward to keeping in touch with you guys and talking to you all too. So take care of yourselves, see you all later, and I'll see you next time.